proliferation, Red Scare, HUAC and McCarthy, National Highway Act, and the STEM crisis. Probably won't go too much into that. Domestic policy is what we're going to focus on, the policy within the United States during the Cold War. As always, the big battle between capitalism and communism. Proliferation, the rapid increase in numbers. What we're talking about is the proliferation of nuclear bombs. You probably think, yeah, that's a bad idea. If we, rapidly increase the number of nuclear bombs, that could have a devastating impact. So we want to watch out for that. Background, remember, Korea, China, these other countries, North Vietnam, they're becoming communists. The dominoes are falling. We have to stop the spread of communism around the world, but also within the United States. The call's coming from in the house. All right, so when China goes, we really start to get spooked in Korea, and now we're all afraid. And then we're thinking, yeah, it could be here. The Red Menace is real. This is tomorrow. Communism it's in America. It's already here. We just don't know it. There's people secretly who are spreading it. The reality is it was. There's the panic-inducing propaganda that you've experienced during your lifetime. Probably during the current crisis, you've noticed that the media, the news, your TV, your internet, your Facebook, your Twitter, they are spreading propaganda to scare you that something is worse than it actually is. And the government's right there the whole time, allowing you to believe something, exaggerating things to scare you in order to control you. This is not new. The government did this during the 1950s. They scared people about communism in order to control them. And you see it today. There is a new crisis after a new crisis after a new panic. During your lifetime, you'll probably experience 10 to 15 of these where the government and the media work together to terrify you, to control you. It's not new. Here we can learn a lesson from the past and say, yeah, let's not let them do that to us again. And then we let them do it to us again. The panic was so real that the Cincinnati Reds were forced to change the name to the Cincinnati Red Legs, because when you were a Red, that was a communist. So sports teams had to change their names because they were so terrified. Is this a communist baseball organization that's infiltrating the United States of America in order to a conspiratorial plot to overthrow the government through curveballs? People will believe anything when they're scared. For example, the Rosenbergs, who stole top secret files to the nuclear bombs. Now, they claimed we didn't do it. Yeah, okay, well, guess what? We have courts. There's due process. We'll find out, did you steal the top secret information and give it to the Soviet Union? So now the Soviet Union now has a nuclear bomb? Yes, they did. And so we juiced them up. They were electrocuted. Pretty big crime. You steal the information, the top secret nuclear bomb information, to give it to our enemies. So now that they have a nuclear bomb, what are you doing? Of course you did it, because you were spies. And they were spies. And there were spies. Look, the government scared us and blew it out of proportion. And the government went way over the top, which is what they do. But they didn't just make it up. They didn't just make up a conspiracy. They didn't just say, oh, there's communists everywhere. There really were communists, and there was really a problem. But they went too far with it, just like we do today when there is a problem, but they blow it up because they know that they can get more. They have more power. They can gain more power. They can get more control. HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee. So the government was spying on Americans, investigating Americans that we thought were communists that were leading to overthrow the country. And yes, there were Americans who were communists that were working for the communist government, that did want to overthrow our capitalist society, that did want to overthrow our democracy. It was there, but was it widespread and out of control? Probably not. Did we blow it up too much? Yes. One was in Hollywood, where the actors were siding with the socialists. And one of the fears of the government blowing it out of control was that Hollywood is going to spread communist messages in. Don't look at the screen too long. They're going to brainwash us into being socialists. As Hollywood is inside on this and they're spreading socialist ideas, they're going to brainwash Americans to believe in communism and that greed is evil. And we've got to investigate Hollywood. And you say, wow, this is crazy. Well, okay, remember. Does our government and our media blow things up? Do they exaggerate things? Do they take things out of proportion to control us? Yes. But do they do this out of thin air and completely make it up? No. Is there a grain of truth? Is there something real happening that leads to this? Yes. Yes, there were actors who were socialists, that were communists, that were organizing and wanted to change our government and wanted to overthrow our government. Now, maybe they didn't think that it was going to be a violent revolution, but folks, we've studied American history. You know how this works. If you overthrow a government, it's always violent. the American Revolution, the Civil War, every war that we've been involved, every war that we have studied in American history too, when you overthrow a government, people die. So these actors either were naive or they were just lying to us when they said, yeah, we want a new government, but we don't want people to die. That's the only way you do it. If you're going to turn America into a socialist communist nation, it's got to be through violent overthrowing. And they're going to say, well, no, I just went to a socialist meeting because I believe in socialism. I don't believe in the totalitarian stuff. And that's often what you'll hear. That's often what you're going to hear from these actors that we look back at this time and say, the HUAC, the House Un-American Activities, I cannot believe we were investigating these actors. We were blacklisting actors. We canceled their careers because they went to one meeting. Yes, they went to a communist meeting. They went to a communist meeting run by people who wanted to violently overthrow our country and kill our leaders. Imagine you went to an ISIS meeting today, the Islamic terrorists, but you only went to this Islamic terrorist meeting because you believe in their economic ideas. I don't like the chopping heads off people. I don't agree with murdering people. I don't agree with the way they treat women, but I like their socialist ideas, so I went to the meeting. We would throw you in jail and no one would hesitate to do that. Same thing then. We look back and we try to make this lie about, oh, well, they were just, they believed in socialism. They went to a meeting that they knew was a part of socialist totalitarian, and if they didn't, then they were ignorant and deserve the punishment that they received. These were not innocent, naive people. They knew what they were doing. They knew what was going on. They knew what was in the news. They knew what the Cold War was. They knew what was happening in the world. It was real. So again, the best example of, we often I cannot believe the government punished these people for going to meetings. If you went to an ISIS meeting, you would be punished. It's the same thing. And you can't say that, well, I only agreed with their economic policy. Yeah, you only agree with the economic policy of people that are mass murderers. The communists have murdered millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. Well, I'm going to ignore the hundreds of millions of people that are controlling this meeting. So this meeting is run by people that have murdered 100 million people. I'm going to ignore 100 million dead people just because I like the idea of sharing. It's crazy, but that's what we teach students. That's what's in your textbook, and that's what you got to write. If you're asked, was HUAC a bad idea, and should we have investigated these actors, you're supposed to say, we are terrible. We shouldn't have done this to those actors. They were plotting with communists who had murdered hundreds of millions of people. Joe McCarthy, he's another guy that we paint as, look at this horrible guy. He was investigating Americans, and he had a list, and he was ruining people and catching communists. And did Joe McCarthy go too far? Did he push his power too much? Did he investigate too many people? Yes. But did Joe McCarthy catch actual communists within our government who were spying on America, who were plotting against America? Yes. Joe McCarthy was a good guy until he wasn't. But we need to remember that. Unfortunately, in your history book, and what you'll hear is Joe McCarthy, just a bad dude, went above his power, abused his power, evil, evil, evil. No. Joe McCarthy caught actual communists who were plotting against Americans, who were hurting Americans, who were hurting our country, who were changing and hurting our way of life. He caught them. He investigated. He did some good. Unfortunately, did he take that power and go too far with it and push too far? Yes, he did. And when he started investigating the White House, the heat got turned up. He started investigating our army and saying that there were communists everywhere. And he knew all about them. He had a list of names, and he investigated one soldier in particular. And that's where it all started to fall apart. So McCarthy was really a bully in there, ruining people's lives. And eventually until Edward R Murrow stands up to him. And we make Edward R Murrow to be this great guy. Like, America's pretty much looking the other way while McCarthy's just picking and choosing who he's going to name as a communist and basically ruining people's careers. Eventually, the CBS News under Edward R Murrow will stand up to McCarthy and bust him out on it. Just trying to brainwash you, I don't know. So that's great, but McCarthy was good until he was bad. That's the real story. But if you want to pass the AP test, Joe McCarthy is an evil person. Imagine a nuclear bomb is dropped on a city. Well, we're all going to die. Well, you know what? And then the zombie apocalypse. Well, the zombie apocalypse and nuclear war are not necessarily the same thing, Mr. Dietrich. Get your sci-fi correct. Well, okay, whatever. So we need to do something. If a nuke is going to come for us, we need to have some advanced radar systems. We also need highways, and so people can get out. If you've ever watched the zombie movies, and people need to get out of the city while the virus is spreading, while the zombie apocalypse, we need to get out of town. So we need to build highways so people can quickly evacuate during a nuclear apocalypse. So we pass a law. Now, we've had these laws in the past. The American system in 1816 created the original roads throughout our country, but we need more roads. We have a bigger country with bigger cities. We need better plans. So the National Highway Act of 1956 will create an advanced highway system so that technically we created this. Like, we look at the highways that we have today, we're like, oh, cool, it's awesome. It makes it easy to get where places. And technically the reason they created this was in case they dropped the nuke, we could get out of town pretty quickly. Just like if there's a hurricane, people can evacuate the city rather quickly. Also, having this network of 4-lane highways allows our military to get anywhere they need to very quickly. This is the National Highway Defense Act. Our highways, it's cool, it helps our lives out, but the real reason was to get the hell out of a city. Probably shouldn't, that's not a cuss, it's a Roman curse word. And also to get into a city pretty quickly. Let's just act like I've never said anything. So there's your highways. Great jobs. Now think about this, let's think about it economically. So if I want to ship my goods from over here in the West Coast, or well, let's say Colorado or Wyoming technically, over to the East Coast, it's going to take a week to get there. This is before the National Highway Act. It's going to take a week to get the goods there. So I got to pay a guy for 5 days. That's 5 days, whole days that I'm going to have to pay him. Well, when you build this new highway, he can get there in 2 days. Now I only have to pay him for 2 days. I'm going to save money. And when I save money, I can charge a lower price on my goods. I don't have to jack the price up to make a profit. Now that I'm saving money, I can lower my price a little bit. And when prices drop, people tend to buy more goods. This boosts the economy. How will we boost the economy? By simply building infrastructure or roads or bridges or anything, railroads, high-speed railroads. Internet technology is also an example of modern day of how we can build infrastructure that can stimulate growth and increase productivity. So before the Highway Act, because there wasn't a lot of roads to get everywhere, most of your factories and businesses were located in the city. There weren't a lot of roads. And when there aren't a lot of roads, remember, before the Highway Act, before 1956, not a lot of roads. If there's not a lot of roads, and there's not a lot of cars. If there's not a lot of cars, you can't really move around a lot. So everything is located where you live, which is in the city. That's where the factories and the businesses are. And so when people come to the country and, hey, where are the jobs? Where are the stores? They're all in the city. So you all move to the city. You can't go live in the country because you can't get from the rural countryside to the city. Everyone has to move to the city. We crowd into the city. People migrate to the city from the south, and we get these highly congested areas where everyone lives. Then, so here it is. There's an example. Here's a city. There's everything in the city. Everybody's got to live in the city. Then National Highway Act is passed. We have these roads. Now, roads means more cars. You can move about. You can live about. You can get wherever you need to go in the city. I don't have to live in the city anymore. I don't have to live in the city to get to the work. I can live out in the suburbs and drive to work every day. Major change in American life because of this Defense Act is going to change the economy. It's going to change society. And so now people are like, well, I don't have to live here. I'm going to go move out here. I've got land. I've got more space. I've got a backyard. I got a bigger house. I'm going out there. Now I can just drive to work instead of living in a giant apartment building with thousands and thousands of people stacked to the sky. So people start building homes out there. And then when the people move out there, schools start getting built out there. And where do people spend their money? Out there. And where do people's taxes go? Out here. So as the people move, homes move and the families move. And so when the families move, the schools move. When the schools move, all the money that's getting spent is actually starting to be spent out here. And all the money that they make goes to the taxes out here. It's no longer in here. The tax dollars are paying for this school, paying for these communities. Tax dollars now are gone from the inner cities. And as the tax dollars vanish and all the people are living outside, the factories and the stores all tend to move out here as well. And the inner cities crumble. So the National Highway Defense Act, building these roads to make us move, or allowing us to travel and make it easier to ship goods, all these benefits. The unintended consequence of this action is that the inner cities are deteriorated. They are become dilapidated. They basically implode and fall apart. And the people that are left living there have less tax dollars, have less support, have less services. They struggle. Whereas the people out in these outer belts near the highway where the money flows and the tax dollars and the schools go, their life improves. The government wasn't intentionally trying to do this. This is just an unintended consequence of a law. A lot of times we think of a law and how it benefits people. There are unintended consequences to every law. One law is going to benefit one group, and there's going to be an unintended consequence or even an intended consequence sometimes that will hurt other groups. Sputnik gets launched into the sky. This is the first satellite by the Soviet Union. America sees that and we're like, oh no, we're stupid now. And we'll look over at the Soviet Union and realize, oh, they got more missiles and more missile factories than us. We're so stupid. Wow, we're so stupid. And so America's looking like, look, they got the satellite and the space and they got all these bombs and they've got more scientists than us. We got a problem. We got to catch up. There's a missile gap. There's a factory gap. There's a scientist gap. There's a brain drain. We're so stupid. We got to figure this out. And so because they did this, America during this time is going to make kids take a bunch of math and science classes. Sound familiar? They're going to force a bunch of math and science down the road. Here's the facts, folks. And here it is in 2012. American students ranked 27th in math and science. We hear this all the time. We're so stupid. If we're so stupid, then why are we still doing well? Why are we still one of the greatest countries in the world? We go through this cycle over and over and over. It's absolutely ridiculous. It happens about every 10, 15 years. Something will happen, and we'll look at the schools, blame the schools, and say, you're so stupid, you got to take science and math. And then something will happen, and we'll do it again over and over and over. We've never really been that great at science and math. We've never been really that good at great science and math. We don't all have to be great at science and math. Say it with me. We all don't have to be good at science and math. Just some of us. We're not all going to build satellites. We're not all going to build computers. We're not all going to go to outer space. We just need a couple of us to do that. So if there's only going to be a couple of us that are doing all this science and math, then why are you making all of us take science and math until our eyes bleed and we don't sleep at night and we wake up vomiting numbers and scientific periodic table letters? That's a good place to stop.